Today, Governor Kathy Hochul provided an update on wildfires burning across New York State. The state has deployed a multi-agency response to fires in Orange and Ulster counties in coordination with local fire departments and first responders. State officials say the Jennings Creek Sterling State Park wildfire, which is in both New York and New Jersey, now encompasses 5,000 acres, half of which is in New York, and is 10% contained in both states. The fire in the town of Denning in Ulster County is 95% contained with 630 acres.
Right now we have 15 wildfires, varying degrees of size and dangerousness, but particularly here in Orange and Ulster counties. I'd like to give an update. Right now, New York State is facing the largest wildfire since 2008.
Hochul also announced a statewide burn ban is in effect until November 30th due to an increased fire risk as the state continues to experience drought conditions. Backyard fire pits and contained campfires less than 3 feet in height and 4 feet in length, width, or diameter are allowed, as are small contained cooking fires.